So thank you very much for having me, and I'm going to pass it over to Gary Brown.
Thank you. Give her a big round of applause. Come on. Don't be shy. Come on. My job, I'm Gary. I'm with the Community Foundation of San Benito County, and I was asked to just welcome you here, and thank you all for coming. So you're at a little building called the Epicenter on San Benito Street, and we were 5 years in the making. And believe it or not, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this man Abraham helping us when he was at the city. The city came to us many years ago. We were looking at Community Foundation for a new building, and they said this land was going up for sale. So we worked with the Belcurdo brothers, who are next door to us. We called it the Epicenter because 13 businesses lost their livelihood here at the earthquake many, 31 years ago, which was crazy. A donor, Randy and Rebecca Wolf, gifted the building to the community. And one of the reasons that we did it was because there's a need in the community for meeting space. Hence you're gathered here today. So we have this conference room, we have a boardroom across the way, we have another small conference room upstairs, and another meeting room in the corner. They are open to any nonprofit or any community organization. We even have had businesses come and use it during the day. You're welcome to do it. It's a resource in the community. To my left here is the Belcurdos. They are building a 30,000 square foot. 10,000 on the bottom floor is retail, and there will be an indoor restaurant on the corner here. And then above it is, you're talking about accommodation, 22, what I would call smaller units for couples or individuals and what have you, right downtown. So we're really excited to be downtown. We had an opportunity to build this building outside the city perimeter, and we wanted to be downtown to support the downtown. So the Community Foundation is a philanthropic organization, and our job is to support the nonprofits here in the county and those who support the county. Upstairs are all the nonprofits. We have 11 nonprofits in the building at the moment, and we have capacity to house 17 nonprofits. So I will stop there, even before my 3 minutes. How about that? That never happens with me, as you know. So enjoy it. I think it's great. I think we hear ourselves from a lot of people of the need for affordable housing, especially for our working poor, to be able to live in San Benito County. So many. I had a wonderful lady in my last office, and she came every single day from Los Banos. She was born and raised here. Her and her husband got married. They couldn't afford to buy a house here. They could afford. He would commute up to Fremont every day, but she came here. Absolutely ridiculous. No offense. I mean, talk about the cost on the environment, their time, their energy, their emotion, and she really wants to buy here. So I think whatever we can do to bring affordable homes to our community is a big one. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gary. Very much appreciate that. And Supervisor Dirks, again, thank you all. And thank you all here joining us in person and all of those joining us via Zoom and Facebook Live. So just quickly want to give an overview for tonight. We will be moving forward with our lovely panelists. We've got Elizabeth Madrigal with Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. We have Veronica Lozama with SB-COG, San Benito County Council of Governance. And we've also got Abraham Prado with the County of San Benito. And so once we move through our panels, we're going to go ahead and open it up for some Q&A. This is 1 hour, so we're going to be as precise as possible so we have as much time to get to a robust discussion with everyone here in person and online. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. As Alyssa said, my name is Elizabeth Madrigal. I'm the Housing and Sustainability Policy Manager at Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, and just really excited to be in San Benito County today. Next slide.
Thank you.
So just starting off right off the bat, so some of you may be asking, what is a housing element? So housing element is a blueprint for how a city will meet its housing needs over the next 8 years. And just for a quick recap on other elements within the housing element. So the housing element is required by state law, and it has been since 1968. It's one of 8 elements required to be included in the city or county's general plan, but it's also the community's housing blueprint. And housing elements identify both current and future housing needs, and they outline the policies, programs, and objectives that are required in order to meet these needs. And within the housing element, I really just want to stress that it's important for community members to have input to collectively guide the process of regional growth, since it's something everyone will be living with for the next 8 years. So we really need to be sure that we're collectively producing housing elements that will set us on the right track towards more equitable and healthy local communities. Okay, and then this next slide here. So also really just want to stress that the housing element matters because it's an opportunity to address our current housing crisis. Supervisor Betsy Dirks alluded to, and through the RENA process, we could expect to see more homes within our community, but also better access to housing and deeper affordability, as stressed before as well. And then in this slide here, so I want to highlight that affirmatively furthering fair housing is a new component of the housing elements. So this is a law that came from Miguel Santiago out of the Los Angeles region. It was adopted in 2018, but it really came into play January 1st of 2021. And under this legislation, all cities and counties within the state must take meaningful action to combat discrimination in order to overcome patterns of segregation and integrate communities. And this relates to the housing element, and that the housing element needs to be viewed through the framework of affirmatively furthering fair housing. And this is something that we've seen that the State Department of Housing and Community Development is stressing this cycle. So we're really fortunate here in San Benito County, Monterey County, and Santa Cruz County that we're not the first ones in this process. There's regions like the Bay Area, Los Angeles, San Diego, that have gone ahead of us, and the state has sent them letters either approving their housing plan or denying it and giving them very detailed feedback. So that's what we're going to be on the lookout for here when the county and the city submit their respective documents. And then this slide here, as you'll see, are really just a number of homes that need to be planned for within the housing element documents. Really want to stress as well, and Veronica will go into this in her portion, that these are draft numbers, so they still need to be finalized by board members within the Council of San Benito County Governments. So you'll see the unincorporated county has 754 housing units. Hollister has roughly 4,200 units, and San Juan Bautista has 88 housing units they must accommodate for in the next planning cycle, which goes from 2023 to 2031. And then this slide right here is really just a milestone. So highlighting where we are in this process, as you'll see with the yellow dots, and then where we can expect to go in the next couple of months and stretching into the next year. So you'll see right now, we're really focused in the process of completing the housing needs allocation and the number of units that must be built for in the cities and the unincorporated county. And you'll see then that it really stretches the whole process. But really, and this is one of the first workshops to do that housing element preparation and public participation. So it's going to be really vital for you all to get involved with the county, Hollister, and San Juan Bautista to see how you can influence the process. And then in this slide here, so going through the next steps, as I stated before, what's really important is really just engagement opportunities. And then from the MF end, what we've been doing in Monterey and Santa Cruz counties are these workshops as well. And really just working with the cities and counties over there additionally to see where they need more resources, because we all know here in smaller areas such as ourselves compared to the Bay Area, sometimes there aren't as many resources. So really just pulling together and acting collectively to make sure we have strong documents that will pass state approval. And then right here, really just want to stress the survey code that we have that will be going into more in depth later on. Thank you all. That covers my portion of the presentation.
I want to start my presentation by just giving you some brief background on the purpose of the agency and the role that we play here in San Benito County. transportation issues and matters. COG's primary goal is to do cooperative planning, coordination, and technical assistance on topics that are of mutual interest to the three agencies. An example of some of the important work that COG undertakes at the agency is we do the planning and ultimate construction of the Highway 25 project. In addition to that, we are administrating the Measure D program. That's the 2018 voter approved tax measure that is going to be providing critical funding for Highway 25, local street and road improvements, bicycle, pedestrian, and public transit projects and programs.
And Veronica, don't mean to interrupt, but do you mind actually using your microphone? The folks online are having a hard time.
Is that
Just hold it down.
Okay, is that better? Okay, great. Now I'm really going to be loud. And so COG actually plays a small but very important role in housing, believe it or not. The agency is responsible for preparing the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA for short, and this process is undertaken every 8 years, as Elizabeth noted. The COG is also governed by a board of directors. This ensures that we have representation from the three agencies when it comes to issues across the three jurisdictions, such as I noted, transportation planning and RHNA as well. For the public's benefit, the COG board is comprised of 2 representatives from the county board of supervisors, 2 from the Hollister City Council, and 1 representative from the city of San Juan Bautista. And I see a couple of supervisors and council members in attendance, so thank you for being here this afternoon or this evening. So what exactly is RHNA? As Elizabeth alluded to, the RHNA is the process that is part of the California housing law used to determine how many homes each local government agency must plan for in its housing element. There are basically 3 key steps in the process. The first is that the California Housing and Community Development Department provides its housing allocation to the San Benito region every 8 years. And for this 8-year cycle, our allocation is 5,005 housing units. So again, that's during an 8-year planning period. The COG then has the difficult task of deciding how it's going to split that number among the 3 agencies. So as you can imagine, it's quite an interesting process. And from there, it's up to the local agencies to decide what that housing will specifically look like. For example, high density senior housing, low income housing, and other forms of housing. And Abraham Plata will be going into the housing element component of our presentation. And as you can imagine, the RHNA process, it includes a lot of coordination, not only amongst the 3 agencies, but also with members of the public. And COG, we actually kicked off that process about a year ago in September of last year. And during our public engagement process, the COG also held several meetings that were open to the public, as well as some public hearings. And again, the purpose of these meetings is to figure out how the COG is going to allocate that state designated number to the 3 agencies. And after much coordination and public input, the COG released the draft RHNA allocation in July of this year. Several factors led to the distribution, including availability of sewer, water infrastructure, job, housing balance, transportation, and overall resiliency. And as far as the next steps, the COG board will hold its final hearing on the RHNA at their October 20th meeting at 4 p.m. At this meeting as well, the board will consider adopting the RHNA allocation. Once that is adopted by the board, then that information gets provided over to the cities and the county for implementation into their housing element. And that's about a 1-year process. And that concludes my presentation. I've provided my contact information should any member of the public have any questions regarding the RHNA or regional highway projects. Please don't hesitate to give me a call or send me an email. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague over at the county, Abraham, who's going to be speaking about the importance of the housing element.
Yes, like Veronica said, my name is Abraham Prado, and I currently serve as the Assistant Director of Planning and Building Services for the County of San Benito. I've been with the county for approximately 6 months now, but I bring with me a little bit over 15 years of planning experience. And I've also actually worked in 2 housing element updates in my career in planning as well. I was born and raised here in San Benito County, and growing up in San Benito County, as we know, it's a county full of rich in agriculture. And growing up in the 1980s, dating myself a little bit here, I remember all of my family working. My parents, my aunts, my uncles, my mom being the eldest of 10, my dad being one of 12. At that time, my mom and my dad, they had their home. They had a home on Central Avenue, part of the Villa Hermosa subdivision. And it was an affordable home. And all of my, some of my aunts and uncles also lived with us, and we were 5, but I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. So I started learning a little bit more about overcrowding. Overcrowding is one of the sections of the housing element as well. And we have a big issue. Our supervisor was talking about the needs of housing. Overcrowding, having multiple families living is a big issue. So I lived part of that as well growing up. But the majority of my uncles and aunts lived in labor camps in the area seasonally, and then sometimes they would go to like other counties like San Joaquin County. But I remember that late at night for dinner or on weekends, we, as you can tell, we had our household was booming with all of my family members there, and one of the hot topics was housing. Housing. My family was, and not only my family, but friends and neighbors were interested about programs for affordable housing in San Diego County. But there were some roadblocks. They worked quite late, so it was kind of hard for them to be here in person to come to workshops. We know that there's a housing job imbalance. 55% or so of the people who live in San Diego County and work out of the county. And so we know that that's a big issue. When they come home, they want to be with their families. So that's important. Excuse me. So I found myself as a little boy going to all these different workshops. Some of these workshops were translated in Spanish, although my family can be applied understanding. They thought that this was such an important topic for them that they always appreciated when Spanish was also provided. And so that's kind of one of the reasons why I got interested in planning and housing and very, very grateful for being in this position. I actually started working for the City of Hollister in 2006, and I am now very grateful that in working with the housing updates, public participation is not just a component of the housing element, it is a major requirement. Perfect, thank you. Major requirement. So the purpose of community engagement is to provide the community the opportunity to define housing issues, like Supervisor Dutch was saying, and support in creating solutions. So essentially know what the issues are in the community and try as staff and as what the elected officials and appointed officials and all the community stakeholders try to find goals and policies to try to implement these housing needs in the community for that period of, in this particular case, 8 years, 2023 to 2031. And the benefits is to increase the likelihood of community members will support the housing strategies and developments. I want to just briefly share that the importance of community engagement is so high, so big, because it's a way that we can hear the community out and be able to implement these policies. I have various examples, but when one of my first projects as a planner was that the first housing element update that we did as a city was in 2009. I was very, very excited about that. We're about to start a planning commission meeting to start introducing the concept, and then we're going to follow with the city council meeting. But to my surprise, it was unfortunate that we didn't get a good turnout. We didn't see a lot of people. And I know that people really cared. I know we knew. And so in my planning department, which was made up by two, my supervisor at that time was Barry Paxton, mentor of mine that many of you may know, and myself. And so we thought we gotta do something about it. And so what we ended up doing was we actually went out to the community. We went to Calvary School, San Diego Health Foundation, all these different places and various examples, but I want to focus on one. There's a component of the housing element called special needs housing, and that's housing for affordable, different categories such as affordable, age restricted, 55 and over, housing for persons with American with Disabilities Act, single parent household, farm worker housing. And so what we did was we contacted Paulina Villa, who, as some of you may know, she recently passed, but I want to really champion here in San Diego County. She did so much. We gave her a call. She said, "Hey, come on over. We will be happy to have you as come in and give us a presentation." So Mary and I went, and we actually teamed up with the county as well. I think Michael Kelly was there, if I'm not mistaken, as well, and a few other folks from the county and city. And we provided our presentation both in English and Spanish. And we started hearing right away, people were saying, there was a little bit over 50 people, and they were saying, if it wasn't for my daughter and her husband and family, I would be homeless. I live in a fixed income. I'm retired. I cannot afford any housing. I cannot afford to rent. And so, and then, people would come up and say, I'm in the same situation. 2, 3, 4, 5 people came up and they would say, and I want to give them their privacy as well. I love them and they're happy to have me there, but I want to give them their privacy. And then they would say, and I honestly, I would want my privacy too. So, it's important. And so for us, it was really, really critical to get that information, not just to document it into the housing element and to provide it to the state and to say, look, we're meeting all of the requirements. Yeah, there's a component of the letter of the law to meet the letter of the law to get a stamp and say, okay, you have passed you have a certified housing element, crucial and important. But more importantly is the spirit of the law. What are we going to do with that information and critical information of these housing needs that we have in our community? And so that's such a big important aspect. And so for us, it was very important to be able to work with the different stakeholders and go before the elected officials, work with the elected officials, and provide those goals and policies to them to see if we can implement programs to create these housing needs, to meet those housing needs. And for example, very briefly, from about 10-year span, policy created approximately 350 affordable housing units, along with age restricted 55 years and older housing, farm worker housing, and affordable housing. And so it's all about working together, identifying the needs, and taking to public hearings goals and policies of how we can respond to these needs. But it's very important to hear from the stakeholders, from the community, from the residents, to be able to provide that information and take action. Just very briefly, and we know there's a need. When the 49-unit apartment complex right next to the cemetery on Buena Vista Road was approved, Veronica had a picture of that last month on one of her sites. Senator Ana Caballero was in front cutting the ribbon. I remember when she spoke, within her first 30 seconds, she said, "This is a great project. Let's build 100 more of these. We need them." And the reason why she cited overcrowding, as I had mentioned earlier, it's such a big issue in San Diego County and throughout the region. So I just want to share a few items in regards to the importance of community engagement. Go to the next slide, please. So very important to work with community stakeholders. We know that we have, for example, Chispa, Community Services Development Corporation, San Flores, and we had South County Housing. They did quite a bit of work in the community as well. They were no longer, but we have members who are still working like Seth Akron and others who belong to South County Housing. Very important that residents, elected officials, great to see you all here. Community-based organizations, with that, like Joven Antonio, I remember we also worked with Close Youth Alliance, with Diana Ortiz and her management team. We had a group go out door by door, writing a survey to get information and to get, feedback from the community in regards to housing needs. Very important to have bilingual housing on the workshops like we're doing today. Go to farmers markets. We have Stephanie and Ariel yesterday. Thank you for promoting this workshop, and we'll be doing that more and more as we're getting closer to our there. Interactive surveys, as I mentioned, we did with Diana Ortiz and her team. And a little bit about the map for housing development. Sometimes a picture tells more than 1,000 words, as the saying goes. But as part of the housing element, there's a site inventory map in which each jurisdiction will show essentially a map of their jurisdiction and show areas within the map in which we can map out those numbers that we were showing, that Veronica and Elizabeth were showing in regards to the numbers that Hollister has, San Diego has, and San Juan Bautista, to show where we can potentially meet the affordability needs on those parcels. And so that is a part of, that is an appendix within the housing element, or existing housing element has those. And so that is something that we should be able to show, our plan is to show that more to the public so we can all see and make sure that we comment. Can we go on to our last slide, please? So some of the aspects is, provide flyers with valuable information at stores. We'll start seeing more and more of that as we get closer to having more of these workshops and provide more information to the communities. Also, very important to provide, that we have a large Latino population in San Diego County. A lot of them, residents can't get by in English, and I can see that at countless meetings. But when it comes to topics such as housing, such important livelihoods, I have found that they appreciate to hear in Spanish as well. So in the past, we've done free public service announcements like KMPG, it's a local radio station. They were local for many years. They just moved to Baltimore, but they still play here in Hollister. Social media, have a dedicated webpage for housing, and I know that some of our elected officials have social media as well, with a lot of followers, providing information so they can share as well. And then just being actively involved in the community. I lived all my life here, with the exception of 3 years when I went to school to Los Angeles. And so I constantly get stopped by people who know me and by people who don't know me, that know that I work in the city. And, they ask questions, and it's great. I love to share. My wife, not so much. She sometimes tells me to kind of hurry up, but she supports 100% what I do, and it's good to be able to share the information with our community. And so I'm very happy to be here. Very happy to see all of you here. And I think that working together and having a good plan forward for the implementation of affordable housing, it's really great to be able to be responsive to our communities. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you all so much, panelists and Supervisor Dirks once again. And with that, we'll go ahead and move into the Q&A segment for this evening. So does anyone have? Yes, good call. Does anyone have at the summit setting a question they'd like to ask the panelists? Raise your hands, yes. And would you like the mic?
Sure. Actually, this is partially a question for Supervisor Dirks, because you mentioned that an affordable housing ordinance is making its way through the county approval processes now. And in my experience of 40 years of working in affordable housing, inclusionary housing is the single most effective and least financial technique for getting permanent deed-restricted units. So I'm wondering the schedule, because it sounds like it's potentially ahead of the housing element, and then the housing element drafts that come up will just have to adjust to whatever the current board of supervisors. There could be changes after the November election.
It's
Yes.
So we're currently working on revising that policy. It had been going on for quite some time. So how long has it been? It was even pretty. I've been here for about 10 months. 2019. Thank you so much.
Actually, 2016.
Okay, 2016. So we're making our way. But I think there's the light at the end of the tunnel, and I understand your concern that you have. But I think this the revisions to the ordinance are very inclusionary. It's a lot more aggressive than anything we've done in the past. And so I think it will fit well nicely into whatever housing elements we do need. And I understand, I mean, probably from your standpoint and the work that you do, there's always more that can be done. But we did look at it in a way that could be effective and not just in theory. And so that is what we're doing and looking at.
So how many units have been generated so far? Because I was at hearings in like mid 2000 something, and before the specific plan with the 8,000 units of on Fairview, that whole thing was approved with 0 inclusionary housing units.
Are you talking about Santana Ranch?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so with Santana Ranch, so the developers agreement was written and approved in 2010.
Yep.
So it was written and approved quite some time ago. I think it was
because I came on as a planning commissioner in 2010, it was already approved in flood. So it had been 8 or 9.
And the first ordinance was
Yeah.
ahead of that Margie Barrios torpedo doing anything.
okay.
Sorry.
Not going to comment on that, but what I will say is that as far as that developers agreement went, there are 6 affordable units that were included in that, and those will be done within the next couple of years as part of the apartments that are being built. It'll be in that second phase, and so and we're looking right now. We're working with Anderson Homes to see if we can kind of increase that number, considering the needs that we do have. We don't have leverage over that, except because of the developers agreement that was done many years ago. But Supervisor Tiffany and I are on that ad hoc committee, and we're giving it our best shot. And we are in conversation. So it's not just a no, thank you, we're moving on anyway. He is entertaining us. And so we're hoping that we can get somewhere and come to some sort of conclusion on that within the next month or so. Anything else pertinent I should add to that?
No, that's as part of the as you mentioned, Supervisor Dirks, the 6 units would be for affordable, and then the others, unfortunately, they're closer to market rate, but they are supposed to be at least a moderate level. And as you all know, moderate level, 80 to 120% of the area income, not that affordable, but at least that's where Supervisor Dirks mentioned that we're trying to see how we can try to have maybe work on having some vouchers also be able to be included in there, so that way the cost can be lower to the families that's just
And so the 6 units are low and very low. Yeah. And then the rest are moderate according to the standards that were in the developers agreement.
Thank you. And I think we do have a question. I'm going to let you keep this one on the panelist microphone. So I do see we have a question from someone on Zoom, Patricia Salcedo. She has her hand raised. So let's see if she's able to join us and ask her question live.
Yes, good evening. This is Pat Salcedo, and I'm with BIA Bay Area. First, let me say we appreciate your holding the meeting this evening. What I wanted to do is basically make some comment in regards to concerns that BIA Bay Area has. And it has to do currently with what the county is pursuing, and that is the elimination of the Bolsa, San Juan, Fairview, and Union new community study areas. If this proceeds and happens, we are concerned that this should be included as a significant constraint for the county's housing element going forward. We also are concerned with Measure Q that will be voted on in the November election. And if this is successful and it passes, this is another significant constraint that would happen for the county's housing element. The bottom line is all the units that the county should be producing could well be pushed into the city of Hollister or San Juan Bautista. And they already, particularly Hollister, has a significant number of units, which they struggle to produce the housing that needs to be built under our housing crisis. So my purpose tonight was to raise those concerns, raise those potential constraints, and ask that they be included in the constraints section of the housing element for San Benito County. Thank you. Yes, it's not.
The first part of what you were asking about was the resolution about the new community study that the Board of Supervisors, including myself, just voted on. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that you want to make sure. Okay, so what we're doing is we're doing an urgent like revision to the general plan and looking at that process and looking at those new community study areas and seeing their viability and whether or not that's a good place for where they're supposed to be. We understand that we have to meet the RENA allocations. And so in light of where we're at now compared to 2015, the idea is let's look at those. Are they in the right location? Should they be there? And do we need to put them somewhere else in order to make it effective for planning for the community in general? Abraham's nodding to reiterate that, but I've been a part of that process, and so we're in the process of looking at that and doing that. And then I think the second part of your question is also too about Measure Q and how, if it passes, how would that affect building in the future? Is that correct?
That's correct. It's a concern.
I think that's also a concern I share.
All right.
And so because we are worried about what will happen with our regional housing needs allocation, what the state would do with that, and all of those things too. So that is a very well documented concern. It sounded like at the end you wanted to make sure that we were aware of your concerns and that we were documenting those. Is that correct?
That's correct, as part of the constraints section of the housing element.
Oh, specifically in the constraint section. Okay, I'm sure we have people here who are taking notes to make sure that we're getting all of this down as part of the public input. And so thank you, Patricia, for calling in, because I think your concerns are concerns that a lot of us in this room have. And I'm sure other people who will maybe look back on this or are watching this as well.
Thank you, Supervisor. I appreciate your clarification and responding to my questions.
Okay, thanks. I'm glad I was able to help answer some of them.
Follow up with an email.
St. Turks.
Did you want to take a stab at that, Abraham?
I can. I think it was perfect how Supervisor Brooks indicated. Just if anything, I just in regards to the community area, some of the concerns that were brought up at the board was regarding some of the concerns with like the coastal study area. For example, there's Highway 25 and Highway 25 until the new construction of Highway 25 is implemented. There should be better access there. Also on the Fairview study area, a lot of that section, which is basically along from McCloskey east of Fairview all the way to 156, a lot of that area has been subdivided to smaller lots, like 5 to 12 acre lots, and so it's kind of hard to be able to get a big viable area for a potential new town. But that's, like Supervisor was saying, that's what we will be analyzing with the general plan amendment that this Board of Supervisors has initiated as of the September 13th Board of Supervisors meeting. And in regards to Measure Q, if it does get approved, that essentially adds a whole new layer to the development process as to where if a project would require a general plan amendment, then it would have to go through the regular planning cycle process, and then go through the vote of the people. So that's just an additional layer, which, as I understood correctly, Ms. Passalcido from the BIA indicated that it is seen as a constraint for the housing. So just wanted to share.
Perfect. Do you have any other questions from the audience? Yes, can we walk on and get you a mic?
Right here, I live in District 4 of the county. So you don't have to worry about it in District 4.
I worry about all the rest.
No, everything. So, and me too, when I was a planning commissioner for 2 terms in District 4. But my concern, and I see the other counties, especially San Luis Obispo and some of the other counties that are working very strongly on workforce housing. And I see such a need for that primarily for first responders. So if we can use that as basically a recruiting tool, bring people in that are starting with the county and police, fire, ambulance, schools, all of that. Because being a retired police officer myself, when it hits the fan, you're not just there working, you're worried about your family, wherever they are, and whether they're in trouble. So when Loma Prieta hit, a lot of the officers came in from an hour away. They were always concerned about, can I get back home? How is home doing? Are they still okay? Can they get water, food, protection, stuff like that while they were trying to work here? So I see workforce as being a very strong and important element that we haven't really, we've started to address a little, Abraham, with our subdivision out there on Enterprise. We're incorporating that. And for those that don't know, workforce housing is primarily between the low end of regular market share down to, and those are all included in, but workforce isn't part of it. And until you guys all sort of say that to the developers, because we're locals, we're doing what we think is right for the locals, because it's all local involved in our project. But the big guys, they don't care unless you entice them, put it to them, or tell them that they're going to be required to do something. Now, after we finish and we prove it out, then they'll get on board. But they're not going to be getting on board unless they have to, because they don't get every single dollar or every cent out of every one of the houses. So I'm asking, is there something going on with workforce housing that maybe I don't know?
Not specifically. Let me do that.
Not specifically. We're looking at the different ordinances that will address affordable housing, and that is a piece of it. I think it goes back to, the article that I referred to in my opening statements that Stephanie said, like, what happened to the starter home? And I think that's a piece that we really need to start looking at, because that is your workforce housing. That is the kind of element that we need in order for people to kind of get their foot in the door, so to speak. I mean, I guess unintended there. But, so I really do think that it is a huge piece. The other piece that falls on the elected officials is when we're looking at projects and it goes through the planning department people left, you scared them. No, but in any case, or planning commission. So I think it's going to be up to all of us to look at those developers agreements and what are we doing to address those needs? And within those developments, are we addressing workforce housing? Are there elements to those, different developments that are coming in? And if we make those very clear to people that we need those things embedded within it in order for you to do business here, then I think, we'll start to see some change. I think it's unfortunate a lot of the growth that we've seen, it was done, those developer agreements were done a really long time ago. And I don't know with what kinds of decision-making processes happen during that and around that. But what I do know is where we're at today. And I know that the current board of supervisors all 5 of us are very invested, no matter where we're at anywhere else. We're invested in the roads and we're, you know, in getting those handled, but really we are all on the same page about affordable housing. And that includes workforce housing as well. So.
Well, and so, the workforce housing actually is not really starter, but it's also subdivided developer gets 38,000 feet from the entry there. And it's subsidized to a certain degree. And the county could use it as an awesome recruitment tool because, and it fits the whole kind of arena attitude where you keep bringing, they're going to buy below a certain market, but also if they keep it for 30 years, then they can sell it out. But if not, they have to sell at the percentage below the market that they purchased at. So now the stats are good, right? They remain the same and it doesn't throw us out of balance. That problem was created a long time ago by different stuff that should have been managed, stayed low income and didn't. It sort of went on to the regular market and the higher created some issues there. Workforce housing is, you know, the starter homes are the ones that are at the bottom of the market that are the small square footages that are the really like, you know, top and road and statement store and all of that. So, but this workforce housing element could be incorporated in that, but it's a subsidized group that's below that by a certain percentage. Abraham might remember what the percentage.
Not off the top of my head, maybe I was thinking maybe if you have that information, send that over to us. That way we can have that and that way we can see how we can incorporate it. You know, this sounds very good.
And it's income limited. I mean, you know, to make over a certain amount, you don't qualify. And in the lower end, it's like, you know, that's much lower for being in a lower income house. So it's a good balance to fill the gap between the two. And you get a lot of blue collar, but you get a whole group of recruitment people, of fire police and all of the other stuff. Before they've been in there for a while and they're making tons of money.
Right. Workforce housing conversation. Glad to hear that topic come up.
I'm just going to follow on what Ray said here and echo it. Basically, and I'll tell you a little story. San Juan Bautista recently, how can I say this, hired a deputy sheriff from the sheriff's department full-time for our city. And it cost us approximately $150,000 per person. And so we went back to the sheriff, Mr. Eric Taylor, you all know him, and we said, can we have another? We'll give you another $150,000. He says, no, we have no more. We have no more to give. So that's a perfect example of not enough sheriffs in the queue or whatever you want to call them, and not enough housing for them, you know. And so we do need workforce housing. I'm going to try for it in San Juan. It's tougher road there sometimes. You know, we're stuck with partner rate, but I'll try. Thank you.
We surpassed the 10-minute mark, so I'm thinking maybe 1-2 more questions if we have some from the audience.
Very quick question. Have the 3 jurisdictions hired the consultants to do the housing elements over the next year? You showed us the 1-year timeline. And then a quick comment is County Fair has 22,000 people in 3 days opportunity to engage with people next year.
Do we have a volunteer to take that one?
Yeah, I know that we are in the process, and we're in the process of starting that request for proposal to see if we can get a consultant to be able to help us with the housing elements. I know at this time, right before I left the city of Hollister, the city of Hollister had just engaged with that same consultant that's helping the city with the general plan, Facebook's thing. So they just have been engaged for the housing element, but I'm not sure if someone of the staff
Got it.
You answered it. I mean, obviously we'll have an RFP that will go out shortly, but like you saw in the timeline, we are pending COGS approval as well. So we can be really clear to our consultants, this is our expectation. But yes, that is the main goal. And it's going to be coming soon and it's going to be coming fast because we really only have quite a year to finish it off. So that's where you as a public, please keep engaged with us because this will be, it'll come quick. So we'll have cards at the end, but yes, you answered for both of us. We're, if you haven't noticed, the city of Hollister, San Juan Bautista, and San Benito County, we're all in the same timeline. So yes, we each as a our own jurisdictions do have to complete our own housing elements, but we are all thankfully all on the same timeline. So that's where you'll see so much information. And that's why we joined together with Monterey Bay Economic Partnership as well.
Okay. Thank you, Jamila. All right, so we have just a few more minutes. If we might want to close off with one more question for the evening before we move on to the survey.
No transportation question?
Shocker.
Yes.
We were talking about that yesterday. Tuesday night. We were talking about Tuesday night.
Oh, Tuesday. If I can just give a quick update on Highway 25, maybe I know that's the kind of the hot
topic. So currently, the Council of Governments in collaboration with Caltrans is working on the Highway 25 Expressway Conversion Project, which is kind of our new rebranding of the project that is going to build an expressway between Hollister and the county line in Santa Clara. The Caltrans is actually the lead agency on the project, but COG is of course involved in every step of the way. And the project is currently in the environmental phase. So Caltrans is undertaking some environmental studies that that process will take about 3 years. And so we're finding ways to deliver the project as quickly as possible. Obviously, there are a lot of state laws and environmental laws. So there is a process, but our timeline right now is about 10 years. But again, the COG board is definitely very interested and has been pushing a little harder on Caltrans so that we can deliver that project sooner rather than later, as we know that Abraham mentioned that over half of our residents commute outside the county, and so that's our top priority at the Council of Governments. Thank you.
Real quick, Veronica, how fast is BTA working on their part of the project? Because you know a large part of the slowdown hits right at 25-101, and that mile after.
Yes, and the COG is part of what is called the BTA and San Benito COG Mobility Partnership. It's a partnership that was established so that we can have those conversations with Santa Clara County. So as they're doing improvements to their side of the county, we're finding ways to best fit those two projects. And one of the projects that they're working on is the US 101 and State Route 25 interchange. That project is fully funded, and they're in the right-of-way phase, and construction is slated for, I believe it was 2024, if I'm not mistaken. But we do have a website, which is sanbenitocog.org, and we have updates on all of those projects, as well as Highway 156, if you want to know the latest press releases on Measure G, for example, our Citizens Oversight Committee. I know we have a couple members here, but all of that information is on our website. And I, as I noted, I provided my contact information. Should anyone have any additional questions, feel free to give me a call. I'm always happy to talk transportation. Thank you. Not housing, but definitely transportation.
One last question. Maybe a little more.
Definitely happy to allow it. Just appreciate everyone's grace here tonight with our tech difficulties.
So this is sort of more in the now, okay? Because you're talking about 25. When I was on planning commission, the Caltrans attitude was 25 was nothing more than a neighborhood driveway, and they weren't ready to get invested in that. I've been out of office for so that could have changed, but the big deal is the 156 is here and now. I've taken 156 to compare it to 25 and 156, and it's about 4 minutes different by taking 156. I live over office in Benito, so that kind of helps them. So have they done any studies on how much pressure will be taken off of 25 because of the access to 156 when it's widened and improved? And on that, transportation person.
Yes, thank you. So there's always evaluation on how the network operates. Obviously, what happens in one facility oftentimes, affects the other. One of the key components of the Highway 25 project will be to do an ultimate interchange at State Route 25 and 156. So we're hoping that as funding becomes available and the project just keeps going forward, that that will be a major component that will alleviate a lot of that traffic. But again, Highway 25 is a few years down the line. Highway 156 is broke construction in August. We actually have a groundbreaking next Friday. So if you are available between 10 and 11:30 at Grilling and Chilling, feel free to stop by. And the groundbreaking is happening there. And so for the time being, once that 156 project is constructed, yes, it will alleviate some of that traffic. But again, our highest priority, as we've heard from our residents, is Highway 25, and we hear it loud and clear. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you all again so much. And once again, just want to give everyone a great round of applause for just showing up and being part of this conversation. Community is a huge part of this 6-cycle housing element process. So before you all go, if you don't mind just pulling out your devices and opening up your camera to connect with this QR code. We have a very short survey. We would really love to hear from you about your experience here tonight. And have a little more information about where you'd like to see housing in your neighborhood. It's about 4 questions, less than 10, shouldn't take too long. And then before you all go, please do help yourselves to some cups, some lunch bags, and plenty of delicious sandwiches. Thank you all so much once again, and I hope we continue the conversation further. Thank you.